Welcome to the Relationship Cycle with Jorge and Nelsa, where we talk about dating to divorce and everything in between. So, Poppy, we're back after our first episode. It was so exciting. Thank you for those of you who were on our uh, first episode of the Relationship Cycle with Jorge and Nelsa, and for joining us again today. Our topic today is going to be: Are you prepared to date?
Ooh, we're about to dig deep.
So we were talking before the show about just how we met. We told our listeners last time we met on Facebook dating, and just how you go into the dating portion of the show, if you will, with expectation and preconceived ideas. I know I did the first time I tried it. Yeah,
Subconsciously, we end up doing that. So it's
right.
important to keep those expectations reasonable.
Right, and not necessarily low, but not at Disney and Hallmark and Lifetime movie level.
Exactly. Not every guy you meet, not every woman you meet is going to be, your forever and only.
Exactly.
That's just the reality of things. But that's okay, because you can meet people who might bring, something positive to your life,
Right.
such as you have. This is something that I've been meaning to do for quite some time. I just didn't know how to go about it. You threw the idea at me, and now here we are making a podcast.
Exactly. I mean, if we had not stayed open to, just the possibilities. And I think that's one of the things about you that I really like. If I can say this, that's out to everybody, being with someone in a relationship, whether it's a friendship, if it's a courtship, if it's a marriage, but having open, honest communication and being able to really speak your truth in a safe place. And I felt like even from the very first, our first chats and back and forth, you were very honest about what your expectations were for yourself, like what you want. You were very clear about that. And I felt like I was open with you as well. And then just remaining, just being okay with seeing where things go.
Open.
Yes. I know it's like drumming that word into people's head, but sometimes we do close ourselves off to good things that may not be what we expected, but it's still good for our lives in a different way.
And probably one of the things that we want to hammer is that when you know where you stand and when you know what you're looking for, and you can convey that to people, that's going to improve all your relationships.
That's so true. It really does raise the level of your working relationships with people, family. Yes, friends. Totally agree with that. But you've been doing some research in our week off. So you've gotten some questions to help us see if we're really even ready.
We're about to get deep with some of these questions. I feel like some of these questions, I wish I would have asked myself some of these things early on when I first started my journey of a separated man, single man. Right. But they really grabbed my attention, and I feel that these are things that a lot of people could maybe find useful.
Awesome. Well, we're going to dig deep after the break. So, the show is all about moving forward, and that's what we're about to do. Okay. Stay tuned.
All right, everybody, welcome back. And we're going to unpack a lot and jump right into it. So these are some questions that I really, really want us to tackle.
Okay.
And I feel like these are important questions that everybody should ask themselves if they're out there dating. Question number one would be, do you believe good men and women exist? I ask you.
What? You just going to hit us with like a sock full of rocks right off the bat?
Right off the bat. Let's do it.
All right. Well, you're asking me, so I have to say yes. I'm looking at two right here.
Facts.
And that's not, boasting or bragging or anything, but I think when you've done the work on yourself and you put the time in to do some self-improvement, to do some self-evaluation, yeah, there are good men and women out there. Does that mean people are perfect? Does that mean people are going to satisfy your every desire and your every imagination, whatever wish you have? No, people are human and people make mistakes. But are there good people out there? There sure are, but they may not be where you think they are. They may not come in the package that you expected. So I think we have to, again, be realistic about, am I expecting something from a movie? Am I expecting something from my romance novel? You know, your guy might not come ripped with a six pack. He might come with a keg. You know what I'm saying?
He might have the six pack in the fridge.
Hey, that's what I'm trying to say to you. Like, you gotta be okay with people and where they are, and you have to be okay with yourself, because sometimes I think we put so much expectation on the other person to be so much better or so much greater, because we don't think we're good enough, and it's really about us not being okay with who I show up in the world as, and being free to be myself, and thinking that I'm going to be, you know, I'm going to be accepted. So we don't accept other people.
So, with this question, the reason why I really find it interesting is because part of being in relationships and dating, right? It's about having a good mind frame.
Mm-hmm.
And if you truly believe that there isn't good men and women out there, then you're probably going to end up with a bad woman or a bad man.
Right.
So that's why it's important to have the right mindset and frame when you approach something like this.
Well, and I believe there's a little poem that I used to recite and memorize, and you know, the story goes: the man comes to town. This one man comes to town and asks the gatekeeper, you know, what sort of people live here? And he says, what sort of people came from the town you came from? And he says, oh, everybody is. You know, they're bad, they're awful, they're terrible. And he says, well, you'll probably find the people here the same. And then the next guy comes up, says, what kind of people live in this town? He says, hey, what kind of people did you come from? Ooh. He says, they were wonderful, they were amazing. He said, I'm sure you'll find the people here the same. You know, put it simply, like my mom used to say, you get what you're looking for. You get what you're looking for. So if you're looking for people to be, this is how I did in the profiles. I'm gonna tell you the truth. This is how I'm gonna give you an elimination trick, ladies.
All right.
So if the person says, I'm looking for somebody trustworthy, who doesn't lie, who will always be loyal and will never cheat on me, and I was like, ooh, that's an X.
that's a lot. That's
right. You're telling me already up front.
That's a lot of hurt that's reflecting.
That you have
and
not
hurt people
healed.
hurt people.
Ooh, say it, Poppy. Ooh, say it. But I was just like, no. I cannot have that energy. That is not what I'm looking for. And I'm going to tell you, somebody confronted me when I was dating and hurt. And they said to me, you always bring up what somebody did to you in the past. Do you know that?
Wow.
And I was like, oh, talk about
this on a date?
Well, pretty much, yeah.
Damn.
And I was just like, wow.
He laid it thick.
Yes. But, you know, it's just like we talked about, you know, we're working on our show description or whatever for people. And we're talking about, we don't want to dwell in the past. But how much of our conversation when we're dating do we talk about who hurt us, who did this or who did that? And I start looking at, if a man tells me that his baby mama or his wife or his ex or whoever, his ex-wife, whatever, is not, you know, she's this or she's that, and he goes into complaining mode and launching an attack, that really puts me on alert, because
it does make you pause.
It does make you pause. You're still hurting, you know?
I will say this, because I hear this a lot from people that, you know, even on profiles or people who are dating, they're like, I'm looking for somebody that has his shit together or her shit together. Right. So my thing is always, before you say that, do you have your shit together?
Right there.
Because
are you a good man or a good woman?
Right. So what's that saying go? Don't throw stones if you live in a glass house. You know what I'm feeling? You know what I'm saying? So like, before you start saying you got a list of this is what you want, this is what you're looking for, this is what you're going to accept, you also got to do some self-reflection and make sure that what you're bringing to the table is matching that energy.
Right. Because you want to be equally yoked. I mean, you don't want somebody who is not going to be able to be at your level. And I don't mean that like financially and all that. Sometimes we got relationship shows, and no knock to anybody who that's your platform and that's how you're seeing things. But you don't always look at things from a financial standpoint. Or if you do, if that's where you're coming from and that's what you need in order to feel like your relationship works for you. But it's all about that honest communication that you and I keep talking about.
You got to keep those open lines of communication are crucial. And
Yes.
the I feel like the more comfortable you get with having uncomfortable conversations, the better off you're going to be.
And the better off the relationship will be. True.
And that's just with anybody, not just somebody
Yeah.
you're courting or somebody you're dating. It could be family, it could be friends,
Right.
could be,
Workplace.
workplace,
Yeah.
sit down, have some open dialogue, and listen, I
Right.
promise you, you will get further in life when you
Mhm.
improve your communication skills.
Amen. So what's our second question then, Bobby? I'm ready.
So I propose to you something that, is definitely something that's very important. It's, can I make time for that person?
Ooh.
Because a lot of people, they try to date, but then they're like, oh, I'm busy. I got this going on. I got this going on. And I'm like, listen, one of the fundamental things of dating is being available. And if you are
Right.
not available or you cannot make time for this person, then how do you want to take on a relationship?
Like, what are we
Like,
doing? I never see you.
you know
How
what
do
I
we
mean?
even get to know
And
each
listen,
other?
listen, I am a firm believer. Ain't nobody busier than a person that don't want to see you. You know what I mean?
Ooh.
So when people hit me with, "Oh, I'm too busy," and
Yeah.
I'm like, "Listen, if you're too busy,
Yeah.
I get it, but you probably don't need to be dating. If you're that busy
Right.
that you can't even go out or you can't
Yeah.
meet somebody, then you probably aren't ready to date.
Or
Your
chat or
life
talk on the phone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that's something that is very important because availability is truthfully a fundamental thing
Right.
of dating, right?
Right.
And relationships. Because if you cannot give that person that quality time, then how are you going to get to know each other? How are you going to get close to each other?
How are you going to develop in the relationship? And so, and I think too, you're right with being honest with yourself. Like, do you really want to date, or do you just want to appease other people in your life who feel like you ought to have somebody? I can recall going to, functions, even family functions after I was divorced, and I felt some type of way because I was, flying solo or out with my mom and or my kids or whatever, and I felt some type of way because I wasn't with a partner. And so sometimes we do things to make things look better for everyone else and make a place of comfort for the people in our lives. And we're really not ready to date anybody. We're really not ready to make a commitment. I really don't want to introduce anybody that's a stranger to my people. But sometimes we get into a relationship because we miss the comfort of the dynamic duo, if you
So do you
will.
feel that a lot of that has to do with just the feeling of not being alone?
I think some of it, yes. And I also think sometimes you just don't want to be asked questions by everybody, like, stay out of my shit. And so you give them what they want, so they will leave you alone in the place where you are. Like, I didn't I didn't feel this way, but I know people who have, where they felt like people were very intrusive about what happened and how are you, when they were still in the middle of the pain and the healing. And so they would just throw somebody in their lives where that person really didn't belong there, and it was unfair to the person that they put in that situation
Absolutely.
because they weren't ready for it. And but it was to appease or to cover up. Like, I just don't want to deal with like the what happened. I don't want to talk about it because, when you're in a relationship, if you're with somebody that is a partner for life, or a deeply committed partner, you become that becomes everybody's partner. Like, you marry, I used to say, you marry not only that person, you marry that person's family.
Oh, absolutely.
And so,
For better or for worse.
for better, for worse,
Even if they're crazy or they're rambunctious or
all that.
listen, I am a
All
firm
that.
believer when it comes to serious dating or even, marriage and whatnot, the family dynamic plays a factor. And
And that's something you should
they're
think
going to play a
about
role.
up front.
They're going to play a role.
Up front. You and I, you're Honduran, I'm African American. There's some dynamics there that, how do you make a relationship work when you have cultural differences? And that's a whole different show. But again, we had to think about, is that somebody, and I do honestly, people looking at these profiles, you really need to pay attention to it. Are we going to have a language barrier? That was one of the things that I thought about when I selected you. Is this going to be a problem? But I kept reading into the profile, but there's some profiles that are completely in Spanish. I'm not fluent in Spanish.
Right.
And so I couldn't read the whole profile without Google Translator. So I thought that's not the right relationship for me. I don't even want to attempt this because that's gonna derail before we can even get to some deeper stuff. It's already superficially
Right.
a bomb in the.
I'll say this. So with my approach in dating, I ask women all the time, like, have you dated Latino men before, or have you dated outside your race? I mean, this isn't a secret. I've been in the South 29 years. We know the history that the South has with, certain people not feeling comfortable stepping outside of their ethnicity or their background or whatnot. So it's a fair question. And I ask because I want to know what devil I'm dancing with. If you've never dated a Hispanic man and you're seriously considering me, then I have no problem embracing you within my family and my culture if we get to those levels. But I just want to know where I'm starting from.
Yes.
And cultural differences are absolutely a thing. I don't give a damn where you're from, or I don't give a damn how equal you think everybody is. Cultural differences are a thing, but I don't see that as a bad thing.
No.
A lot of people sometimes see it maybe that it's not good to see people that way. Like, listen, I'm very proud of my culture.
Right.
I'm very proud of my heritage, and there's nothing wrong with being different. And honestly, I enjoy teaching people about my culture and about my heritage. And I do it through food, through music, through different experiences, just like I enjoy dating different women of different backgrounds, because I'm like, hey, this is fun. This is new. I'm going to learn something. Exactly. So,
but you got to make time for it, like the question says.
You absolutely got to make time.
And so we got to make time for these other questions, but we're going to take a break right quick and come back.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're back with our next question. And if you haven't been listening, this is, are you prepared to date? Are you even prepared for a relationship? So do you believe in real love, Poppy?
Ooh.
Now, these are your questions, so I'm asking you.
I absolutely believe in real love. Okay. And I tell people all the time, marriage is a beautiful thing. I firmly believe that.
I agree.
However, you got to marry.
I'm divorced. You're getting divorced.
However, you got to make sure you're marrying the right person, because if you're marrying somebody who's not compatible, then yeah, that's gonna be an issue.
Well, and I think it's a whole separate topic, honestly. Marriage and love aren't necessarily the same thing. You would like to hope that you are marrying someone you love, and I did love the person I married.
Me too.
But I think, marriage becomes some other stuff besides just love. But I think for this particular question, though, do you love you is, something that we've been talking about, self-love, and how are you handling the way you treat yourself? Because can somebody really complete you? Can somebody love you if you don't love you? Can you even allow them to do for you what you won't do for yourself? That's something that I had to come to terms with for my own self-healing journey. And I think that's something that if you're not completely honest, and if you haven't really healed from some old hurts, whether they're from your childhood, from past relationships, whatever the case may be, then can you really move forward in a new relationship with that all hanging out there, all that injury to self, as opposed to, if you're in a happy place, what happens when you meet somebody who really does have, as we said last segment, has their shit together and they want to be with you.
Right.
But if you don't have yours together, if you don't love you, how can somebody add to that?
Let's be real. I've been on dates, where I'm like, man, like this person just has a very negative vibe about them, or just a very bitter, negative approach. And that's not my style. I think you, spent some time with me and you realize that I'm a pretty positive, upbeat person.
Very much.
So if I meet a woman and everything that's coming out of her mouth is bad, is negative, then that to me is not appealing at all.
Right.
And I'm like, damn, like that's not the yin and yang that I'm looking for. Right. You know what I mean?
Maybe ping and pong, but not.
And listen, I will say this. Self-love can be difficult. It's not as easy as it sounds.
Right. I agree.
But I feel that as people, we have to work at that.
Mhm.
The way I work at that is I try to indulge in things that I truly am passionate about and enjoy.
Mhm.
I love cooking, right? I
Mm.
think a lot of people know that, and that to me brings me a joy. It brings me peace, and it puts me in a good mind frame
Right.
or state of mind. I work out.
Mhm.
Working out, I feel like a lot of people maybe miss this point. Working out is good for your body and your physical aspect. However, it's great for your mental
Yes,
aspect
and
as well.
emotional.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah.
And to me, when I work out, after I have had a great workout, clarity, in my
Mhm.
opinion, and it puts me in a good, relaxed state. I feel like I've accomplished something,
Mhm.
and you're doing something good for yourself.
Exactly.
Betting on yourself, you can't go wrong with betting on yourself.
If if it's such a big
Right.
if you are doing the work and you're healing and you're not just allowing yourself to just, you know, just exist, I think. And I think we don't need to just exist in relationships, but we're not going to stay on this one too long, probably because we have plans as we get our shows up and running to bring in an expert. You've already
Absolutely.
identified an expert out in the community who talks about this as a psychologist, and we're going to be bringing other experts in because I think that's a show all by itself.
Oh, all these
Self-love,
questions
getting
probably
ready
could
for
be.
yes, all of them could have been episodes all in their own. But what's the next one? What's the next one? Because I feel like that we're on a roll here. People are like probably deleting profiles as we speak. Hopefully you're on the road though. You're on the
Unmatching
road.
people. They unmatching
I
people as we
know,
speak
right?
right now. Like, yo, this
Ooh,
dude's way too
talk
negative.
about
Let's go
cheating.
away.
No, oh, I'm exiting them right now.
This one I definitely want to hammer in, and it's have I released my past baggage and healed?
Ooh, it goes right along with self-love though, doesn't
Ooh,
it?
man. Because how do you know
Mhm.
when you feel like, hey, I'm healed and I've let go of that stuff, my past? Like, because here's what happens. Um, and sometimes you feel on the surface that you're okay,
Mhm.
but then subconsciously you're still projecting stuff.
Yes.
And that is where it can get tricky, right?
Mhm.
Um,
So, for instance, let's do a little role play.
all right,
Probably
let's
because
do it.
I feel like I was that person for a while, right? So, ask me. So you've been married, single, divorced? Go ahead, go ahead.
All right. So how long have you been divorced?
Almost 3 years now. It was really a hard situation, and I felt like he just didn't understand me, and just didn't know what type of person I really was, and I just couldn't really be myself in the relationship, and I had a hard time really just being who I was supposed to be. You know what I'm saying?
That
And
happens.
then the
That
guy I just
absolutely
broke up
happens.
with, I mean, oh my gosh, it was just all the time, just, checking up on me and trying to see if I was okay or if I was out, with my friends, just calling and calling and calling. And oh my gosh,
It's
I
a
just
lot of
I
pressure.
don't want that. I don't want that, as I move forward. That's, that's
So I
a
will tell
great
you.
role play for what you don't want to take to the date.
Here's the thing. So when you're on a date or just getting to know someone, I do like to dig in a little bit into their past.
Mhm.
However, I want cliff notes. I don't want the whole damn book. You feel me?
Right.
Because if we're gonna spend the whole damn date talking about how your ex was this and your ex was that,
Right.
I'm like, okay, listen, I get it, but I want to focus on how we get along and what
Right.
you're about and what you're, looking for. I don't want to know how Tommy was awful and
Exactly.
how Malika was a toxic woman that ruined your life. I don't want to hear about that stuff.
Exactly.
I just want little cliff notes, and then hey, you know what? All right, we're in the present, we're in the now,
Right.
and now we need to start the path of moving forward.
I do think, though, that those are questions that are important as you're preparing to date, not only for yourself, but on a date, because how a person responds to those questions gives you a lot of information about where they are with their mental health, with how they handle breakups. I can say honestly, with my ex, we talked about this a little bit on the last show, you and I both, when you get to a place where you can feel good about where that relationship stands now, and you're not looking at the past anymore and constantly re-examining what went wrong and what you did wrong, what they did wrong. But you can move forward with the person from the past, whether it's you've released them to move on to be happy, or you're still in, co-parenting mode, or whatever the case may be. Then you know that there's healing that's taking place. But if you're still activated by the thought of that person and having to tell a new person when they ask you a generic, so tell me about your, tell me about your past, are you married,
And that
whatever,
triggers
and
you.
it triggers you, then I think that's when you need to stop and maybe look at some self-love and some psychology
Or like
therapy.
when you're hanging out with friends and then they're like, yo, you got to move on. You got to let go. If
People in your
the
circle tell you.
people in your tribe
Yes.
keep telling you like, hey, you got to move on.
Right.
You got to, focus on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Then that means that they also see that, hey, you're still stuck.
Yes.
In the past, or you're still hurting. So you need to take steps to address that, however that may be, whether
Mm-hmm.
it be with self assessments,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe therapy,
Right.
Maybe finding some sort of spiritual peace or
That's what I was going to
spiritual
say,
guidance.
spiritual guidance or something. Yeah. But there are ways to heal from those things and get through that baggage. But moving on is definitely important, and doing it the right way so you can be happy. That's what we're here to do. So what is our last question? Moving on to our last question for today, because I think these have been really good, and hopefully these have been helpful to you out there listening.
I want to say, was that the fifth one? Or, oh, okay. Do you truly love yourself? And all this stuff
goes
kind of
around with
goes,
self-love. Yeah.
this all kind of goes
Mhm.
hand in hand.
Right.
And the reason why I feel like that's a very important one is because if you don't feel that you are at a good place where you can love yourself, then how do you expect to love someone else?
Very deep, very deep. And also, with this being Mental Health Awareness Month, we're recording this show in October. I think for some people, the examples they have of love may be very toxic, may be very dysfunctional. And so the only template we have is what we've seen, what we've
Right.
experienced. And so if the common denominator, I think, in every relationship breaking up is always you. It's not that it's always your fault, but in what ways maybe are you attracting people who remind you of relationships maybe that you've seen growing up that weren't so healthy, or maybe you have immersed yourself in some things that you don't feel like you deserve to be loved the way
Right.
you love other people. There are honestly some very loving people who get attached to some very narcissistic, abusive, very
Individuals.
negative individuals, because they don't feel like they deserve better. They have that self-belief. And so again, there are experts out there who can help you break those cycles if you feel like you're that person, and do get help. Like, you deserve to be happy. Everyone deserves to be happy. I feel that way about all my exes, from the first person I ever had a crush on, to the last person that I went out on a date with. Everybody deserves to be happy, and it's a journey, but it does begin with, how do you feel about you, and do you believe you deserve to be happy? And that's something I had to ask myself, is, do I truly believe, not are there good men and women, not do I believe in love in general, but am I a good woman? Do I believe I'm a good woman? Do I believe I am worthy of love? And do I love myself the way I want to be loved? I started doing stuff like writing myself love notes and leaving them to myself. I would send myself voice messages on my work phone, or, my house phone.
I like that.
Reminding myself how I was beautiful and I was worth, whatever flowers I wanted to pick up, or I buy myself flowers now. I
cook
don't
myself.
wait.
Listen,
Yeah.
I like to do things for myself. I like to cook.
Exactly.
Listen, when I've had a busy day or stressful week, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna make me the best damn burger I've ever made myself.
Right. And
Because
not
I'm like,
wait.
I've had, I'm like, yo, I love myself.
Right.
I feel like when you are at a good place and you feel that you have that self-love within yourself, then it just makes it so much easier to be able to bring someone else into the fold that's going to add and enhance that good love that you already have. But if you do not have that self-love, then it's definitely going to make it challenging for a new person to come in and be a part of your world, because you're putting a lot of responsibility on that individual. Be like, hey, I'm distraught, I'm unhappy. So you said individual, I need you to come make me happy, and I
Right.
need you to be my therapist, my
Come fix
provider,
me.
my lover. Like that is a
Right.
lot to put on somebody,
Right.
especially when, you know, you don't know what they're going through. You don't know what their
Right.
story
You don't know
is.
if they need fixing.
Yeah, you don't.
As we say in the South.
Right?
Yeah, I might need some repair work.
We
right?
all need it in some capacity, right?
Absolutely. But that's what we're here for, Poppy. The relationship cycle hopefully has been helpful in getting you started and prepared for our listeners out there as you get into the dating pool or re-enter or exit or whatever stage you may be in at this
Listen,
point.
I challenge everyone out there to ask yourself some of these questions.
Mhm.
Even if you are already actively dating,
Yes.
you should be honest with yourself and ask yourself some of these questions just to see what pops into your mind,
Where you stand.
just to see where you fall in
Yeah.
all of this. Because either way, I feel like it could still bring some interesting self-assessments.
Absolutely. But we'll be back next time. Poppy, it's been another good show.
Hey, always great conversation. It's
Yes.
always a blast.
We'll keep it going next time. So join us again here on the Relationship Cycle with Jorge and Nelsa.
Thanks for joining us today. Our questions today came from the show Stephan Speaks. Check him out on YouTube. If you have any suggestions or relationship stories to share, drop us an email at jorgeandnelsa@gmail.com. Buenas noches.